for the festival of lights. Another interesting festival, popular festival, is the Festival of Holi. Usually takes place somewhere around February or March, so getting close to the spring. It is the Feast of Love, and typically honors honors Krishna. And in the observance of Holi, a lot of the focus is on Krishna's playfulness, his being a trickster. A lot of the stories connected with Krishna are him pulling pranks, tricking people. And so for the 3 days of Holi, essentially the societal rules are thrown out the window. And you probably have seen depictions of this, and you might not have noticed. But any sort of caste rules, gender rules are all kind of suspended for these 3 days. Women might go around singing lewdly in public. Men being doused with water. The big one, of course, is people throwing paint at each other. That's probably the image that you've seen if you've seen any of this. And it's kind of, 3 days of all the caste system and all the structures about gender and society. It all goes out the window. And then 3 days go by and everything's back together again, and there's usually revenge, right? I threw paint on this guy, what is he going to do? Nothing. But can be a very odd observance for outsiders to be traveling and suddenly get paint thrown on them. But a really kind of interesting festival. The last one, Navaratri, near Deepavali, so around that September, October time, in preparation for those days. And so they tend to be moments of reflection, preparation, as you maybe get ready to start a new business. You're starting anew in religion, right? Not a new religion, but you're kind of, all right, I haven't been fulfilling my religious duties, so here at the beginning I'm going to be more involved in it. Questions about any of the festivals? There are a lot more we could talk about, and I think Corderon talks about some. All right. Last type of pilgrimage, or not, last type of practice I want to talk about are pilgrimages. Now, from the very earliest times, the land that is bounded by the Himalayas has been considered very sacred to a lot of Indians. And so, the land itself is holy. But of course, there are a variety of local stories related to specific deities. This god appeared at this place, this god is connected with this mountain. And so people go to these sacred places believing that the experience, the connecting with that sacred space, with that sacred story, with that deity, will have an impact on their karma. And so they might go and perform temple rituals there. They might bring something from the sacred site, to kind of sacralize their daily life. While pilgrimage is not required in Hinduism, there aren't strands that particularly require pilgrimage, it's usually connected with ideas that healing will result, good karma will occur, or that you might just experience personal transformation. A couple very important sites. The Himalayas, of course, very important sacred site. Not surprising, mountains form very sacred sites across religions. The names of the snow-capped peaks demonstrated that the divine resided there. And according to some passages, some Hindu texts, if you look upon the Himalayan peaks, your karma will be transformed. People might also take pilgrimages to the Ganges, a very important river, but other rivers are important for pilgrimage as well. But the Ganges flows down from the Himalayas. It's conceived that a goddess resides in the Ganges, and so people will bathe at the banks, hoping that Ganges, the deity, will wash away their bad karma. So people will collect the water and return home with it. Perhaps the most interesting, I think, of the pilgrimages is the Kumbh Mela. I don't have the picture. It is the single largest religious gathering on earth. This picture in the lower right-hand corner reflects gathering at the Kumbh Mela. This picture as well. These two pictures are also part of the Kumbh Mela as well. It is observed every 12 years, the complete Kumbh Mela. There are smaller ones at every 4 years, every 6 years. In 2001, 30 million Hindus gathered for the Kumbh Mela. I think the estimate was 50 million for the one in 2013. Essentially, the story is that the gods were battling demons over a pitcher, right? Dumb out pitcher, not a ball pitcher, nor a picture of something, a pitcher. My accent, my northern accent kind of mushes all of this together. So a pitcher poured out is a kumbha, so they're battling over this pitcher, which has this life-giving elixir in it, immortality. The gods eventually win the struggle and become immortal, but during their battle, drops fall to earth at 4 different places. In Allahabad, the joining of the Ganges, and some other places. And so these 4 are the places that they rotate around and visit. And so at a specific time, on a specific day, every 13 years, people will step into the waters, wherever they are, with the hope that this transformation will take place. You know, and looking for a blessing from the gods. But a huge gathering. I mean, we think 100,000 people getting together is huge. We're talking about tens of millions of people. Any questions about the pilgrimages in Hinduism?
Are any of them required?
They're not required, and there are more as well. There are more sacred sites as well, but they're usually encouraged. You get a benefit out of it, but you're not required to do it. What other questions do you have? All right, let's briefly talk about some ways Hinduism has developed in the United States. Immigration, of course, has led to a variety of Hindus coming to the United States, but as we mentioned on Tuesday, the number of Hindus is still relatively small. And it's only been since the 1960s that you've seen substantial numbers of people coming to the United States, substantial numbers of Hindus, usually related to technology jobs or education, but it can be in other things as well. But there's still a rather long history in the United States of at least the presence of Hindu ideas. In the 19th century, the 1800s, people like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, others known as transcendentalists, became very interested in Indian religion, Indian texts, and so they translated some of those texts and published them in their popular journal, The Dial. And so it was a way that texts like the Bhagavad Gita and others were promoted in the 19th century in the United States. But, of course, you know, that's a very elite form that they're translating. Right? They're focusing on the text. even the Bhagavad Gita, of course, does get closer to more popular Hinduism. And Emerson and Thoreau and the others weren't becoming Hindus, and they didn't decide to convert to Hinduism. Instead, there were some things about Hinduism, particularly the idea of Brahman and the pervasiveness of Brahman in the universe, that they felt really resonated with their ideas as they're kind of moving away from Christianity. One of the first Hindu missionaries in the United States was a man named Swami Vivekananda. In 1893, in conjunction with the World's Fair held in Chicago, was the World's Parliament of Religions. And so there were exhibitions at the World's Fair of various religious people, religions from the world. And Vivekananda appears to have been one of the first people in the United States to talk about Hinduism as a Hindu, right, publicly. Right? There were Hindus before, but didn't have the kind of platform that Vivekananda did. He would go on to establish some societies related to his form of Hinduism, known as Vedanta, and they were spread throughout the United States. As we've noted with Hinduism, but especially with Vivekananda, his form of Hinduism was very ecumenical. This idea of all religions are different paths up the same mountain was essentially what Vivekananda expressed. And so for a while he was very influential in establishing the image of Hinduism for Westerners and what it was all about. Another kind of popular approach to Hinduism that made its way into the United States is the practice of transcendental meditation, or TM. It was founded by a man named the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who died just a few years ago. I believe it was 4 or 5 years ago. He was essentially able to become quite popular due to the fact that the Beatles in the 1960s had sought him out in India for guidance. Everybody knows who the Beatles are, right? Okay, everybody knows the Beatles. Right? And so because it was the Beatles, everybody was interested in what the Beatles were doing, right? And so the Maharishi becomes very kind of popular. And so essentially he taught that our desire to enjoy life is natural, and transcendental meditation was the best path to joy. And so it was a simple procedure. 20 minutes of meditation twice a day would bring about transformation. And so using meditation to tap into Brahman, said the Maharishi, was the way that you experience joy, serenity, and all sorts of other types of things. Being a practitioner was very easy for TM. You had an introductory lecture, you had a second one, and then you had a short period of fasting, and then you received a mantra to say to help guide your meditation. And that was pretty much it. Now, obviously, as it comes to the United States, in the 60s, it's connected with the Beatles. It's popular to some people, but it's countercultural to a lot of other people, right? Because of their opposition to rock and roll and some other things. But eventually, it becomes this kind of corporatized practice, as businesses kind of think, well, this might be a way to help our employees, in their own personal pursuits, make them better employees. Especially, there's concern about upper-level professionals dealing with stress. And it was even for a while taught in public schools, until the Supreme Court in 1979 said, this is a religion and you can't practice it in public schools. But for a while it was just kind of, it's just meditation, it's just this psychological thing, it's not religious. Well, again, in the 1970s that changed. The last expression to talk about is the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, sometimes abbreviated ISKCON. They are often also referred to as Hare Krishnas. It was founded in New York in 1965, started by Swami Bhaktivedanta. Essentially a bhakti movement, right, focused on devotion and centered around Krishna, with the idea being that by performing a chant, which includes the word Hare Krishna, that you will bring yourself to liberation and blissfulness. The Hare Krishnas emphasize celibacy, vegetarianism, and living a rather monastic type of lifestyle. But for a while, especially in the 1960s and 70s, very prominent in places like train stations, airports, other places where lots of people might be going to try and spread the message of this. Today, still around, still popular, often connected with ideas of vegetarianism, so that's how they make their connections in some places. Any questions? What do we have to clarify?
The meditation with the is that part of this?
Yeah, Om is considered to be this kind of sacred sound that permeates the universe. And it's kind of like the sound of creation. And so certain people will chant the Om sound as one type of meditation. Not so much with the transcendental meditation. Usually it's a phrase or something like that. But yeah, there are other forms of meditation like that. Other questions? Well, we'll go ahead and stop there for today. We'll quit a little bit early, we're kind of finished with what I wanted to share with Hinduism. On Tuesday, we will pick up with other Indian religions. We'll talk about two kind of smaller ones, Jainism and Sikhism, and so we'll kind of bring both of them together. And so we'll talk about that on Tuesday. Don't forget, second reflective essay due Monday. And I extended the deadline, so it's due Monday. But if you want to get it in earlier, that's fine. But you don't